So, were you successful? Let's implement this together. And for that, we first of all need to have a look at the filter again. This is a controlled component as you learned, and it is controlled by the expenses.js file. There we have our filter, and then we have the list of items here. So here we also have the currently selected filtered year. So I would say a good way of filtering the expenses here would be to simply filter the props items, which is our array of expenses, based on this year. Now the cool thing is that we're already receiving the items as props here, so we don't even need to change some state, because the list of available expenses should definitely not be affected by the filter. Just because I set a filter should not mean that some expenses are removed permanently. Instead, we just want to restrict the number of items which are being displayed. So in expenses.js, we could simply add a new constant, which are our filtered expenses. And that could be props items, which are all expenses, with the filter method called on them. That's another built-in method which simply filters an array. You pass a function to it, which looks like the function you passed to map, and if this function returns true, a certain item is kept. If it returns false, it's not kept around. And filter returns a brand new array. It does not edit the original array. Instead, a new array is returned, and in that new array, we either keep or remove items. But the original array is not touched. And that's important because, of course, we don't want to lose data just because we filtered. So here in this function, which we pass to filter, we now want to return true or false. And of course, we want to return true or false based on some condition. To be precise, we want to check for a given expense if the date does basically have a year which matches our filtered year. Now for the filtered year, keep in mind that it's a string. Our date, on the other hand, is a date object. But on this date object, we can actually call get full year, and this will give us the, well, full year. And we can call toString on that to convert it to a string, and then compare that to the filtered year, like this. Now this expression here will return true if the year stored in the date is the same year as selected in the filter, and it will return false otherwise. And that means that only items where the year does match our filtered year will be kept around in this filtered expenses array. And now it's simply the filtered expenses which we want to map here, so which we want to render as a list. And that should be all. It's really not too fancy. We don't need to work with our state or anything like that. It's just a simple transformation which we apply before we output something. And chances are that you came up with a more complex solution, which also might be fine. But a key takeaway here is that you shouldn't think too complex. You have all these tools like managing state and so on, but if you're getting data already in a component, and if you just want to change how it's rendered, or how many items of a given array of elements should be rendered, then a simple transformation like this can be enough. Just as we did it in expense state. There we also get a date, and we then just transform the date, or we extract some data out of it to output it. Now we're basically doing the same with our filtered expenses here. Hence, if we now save this, if we reload, we see for 2020 only one item is selected. If I switch to 2021, we got we got 3 items, and we got no items for 2022 and 2019. And that's fine, of course, because we simply have no such items in our list. So this is now working. And as you see, it was actually a quite simple change that was required.